Let me ask you guys, how many Tier 1 teams do you think there are in the Southeastern Conference this year? I mean, if you were to do it, it's very simple, by tiers, how many of them would you put in Tier 1? Georgia, clearly, with an over-under win total of 10.5, maybe the best quarterback in the conference in Carson Beck. They portaled in guys like Colby Young at wide receiver, Trevor Etienne at running back. Those are impact starter guys, even at Georgia, that they portaled in. Offensive line's top-notch there. It's easily a top 3 roster, if not better, in college football. It's an elite coaching staff, so certainly they're a Tier 1 team in the SEC. Texas, I got some pushback on, but I don't know why. Texas has the second highest win total, courtesy of FanDuel, in the SEC preseason. I think it meant something that they went into Tuscaloosa and did what they did last year. It certainly meant something that they made the playoff last year. And they didn't ultimately finish the job. They didn't win at all, but there's not the newness factor anymore. They're not wondering internally, I wonder if we can do that. I wonder if we can measure up. I wonder if we are capable of this. They've already done it. A lot of those guys are back. It's an elite quarterback room. Even if you don't think Quinn Ewers is the top guy in the country, collectively that room is very high level. And all that means is if Quinn Ewers is underachieving this year, he will not remain the starter there because the guys behind him are too good. So quarterback, one way or the other, is not dropping off all that much for Texas this year. If it drops off at all, they portaled in impact players at wide receiver, tight end, edge, safety. The offensive line has been totally rebuilt there over the last couple of years, and they're built for this challenge. Texas, absolutely. Not only is a Tier 1 team, they enter the SEC as a Tier 1 team. I got some pushback on Bama, which basically is just telling me you guys wanted one team in Tier 1, and that's all. That's not the way my Tier 1 shakes out. Bama's at 9.5 wins over under right now. They got the third best odds to win the SEC. Kalen DeBoer's offense, year 1 at Alabama. It's very ironic, but I have more questions about them this year than I think I'll have in the next couple of years. Next couple of years, I know his offense is going to be explosive, and I think it will be in time this year. Early on, is it? How long does it take them to establish go-to names at wide receiver? Could there be names there that have underachieved so far that they turn into 700-plus yard per season type guys? You know, that's not a superstar, but that's a big-time role player. Not everyone can have 1,500 yards receiving. I think there are some guys like that on Bama's roster that have the capability that are now in the right offense to take advantage of that. There are a lot of places there. Edge rusher's one of them, where I don't look at them as being weak. I look at them as being unknown. There are some big-time names from recruiting classes past. Yonze Pierre, just randomly. Keon Keeley, just randomly. These are former 5-star caliber guys. So there's not weakness. It's not lack of depth. It's just lack of proven guys. Dallas Turner's not there. Will Anderson, of course, from 2 years ago. You don't enter the season with one of those guys. But once upon a time, those guys didn't have much experience under their belt either. So you got some really talented guys there. It's just like, what does Kane Womack turn that into defensively? What does Nick Sheridan and Kalen DeBoer, what do they turn that into offensively? I still think it's a Tier 1 team in the SEC, though. These are very, very first-world problems, and you got them at places like Alabama. And you know what else? Ole Miss is a Tier 1 team entering 2024. Some folks are struggling with this one. Everybody wants to put that word out there. Everybody wants to make sure they're on the record saying, now watch out for Ole Miss. Well, you know, plant your flag. Tier 1 or not. I think Ole Miss is a Tier 1 team. It's not a Tier 1 program to me. It's a Tier 1 team, though, this year. They needed the portal pieces. They went and got the portal pieces. They got to have them gel. And there's no possible way for me to know if that's going to happen. I trust that it'll happen. They trust that it'll happen. They've built towards this year. Their preseason is baked in. And what are you talking about there? They don't have a preseason. Well, they kind of do. Colin, could you, show me their schedule right quick. Yeah, there's no official preseason in college. But when you play Furman, and then you follow it up with Middle Tennessee, and then you go to Wake Forest, and then you play Georgia Southern, that's called a preseason by major college football standards. And then when they dive into conference play, Kentucky at South Carolina, these are no gimmies, but it's a great way to dive into conference play. Hey, guess what? I've gotten you through half the season so far. That's already that's 6 games under their belt. And everyone would pencil in W's there so far. Then they go to LSU on the 12th. Later down the road, they got Georgia at home. If you tell me they're splitting those games, that's probably a playoff team. So they probably afford to lose one more. It's 12 teams this year, guys, so a lot of them get in. Ole Miss, especially with Jackson Dart and that wide receiver room they have, and you watch Quinshon Judkins walk out the door, but yet there's really not a whole lot of drop-off because they've got guys that can be plenty productive, multiple guys that can be plenty productive in that running back room. Defensively, how good can Pete Golding have those guys playing this year? The gelling with the portal, with how much they lean on it, that's what matters. And I am blindly assuming, until I see otherwise, that they can get it done. So I would put Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss. Those are my Tier 1 teams this year. LSU up front is a notch below something that I would allow myself to call a Tier 1 team. Missouri, the collective athletic profile of the team is a notch below that of Alabama, that of Georgia, that of Ole Miss, that of Texas. People think I'm hating on Missouri. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I think the world of them. We are talking about bona fide Tier 1 teams. Tier 1 teams can have a lot go wrong and still win because that much raw athleticism just makes up for it. Missouri is not that kind of team. Missouri is a team that could win any game they play, but they've got to have a whole lot more go right on any given Saturday than Georgia does. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just acknowledging the obvious to me. Tennessee, solid Tier 2 team to me, does not warrant Tier 1 consideration. So, that's where my mind's at. I'll be interested to see where you guys go on that.